So Arrow Season 8 Episode 2, Welcome to Hong Kong, was a very solid Arrow episode which keeps up the very fast-paced action and main plot-focused final season that Arrow is paving its way forward with right up until the crossover. Now this episode more or less picks up after the events of last week's episode, which was the premiere, with the very shocking ending which saw Earth 2 get erased completely, which has led to many theories on the internet about whether there are any characters who survived, like Harrison Wells, or Harry Wells should I say, or Jesse Quick, or just other characters like that. But what I think I loved most about this episode, other than the awesomeness that is Arrow being in this constant evolving state, if you will, is that it raised some suspicious questions about the cosmic being that is Mar-Novu, who is of course the Monitor. Now this was also teased to us all the way back at Comic-Con, if I remember correctly, from Stephen Amell himself, who said that Oliver will be finding himself questioning his trust in the Monitor. Now that is me paraphrasing, but he did tease stuff like this coming between him and Mar-Novu in Arrow Season 8, which now finally seems to be fleshed out this earlier on in the season. But before I go on to talk about this episode, guys, be sure to leave a like on this video if you do go on to enjoy, and of course subscribe for more Arrowverse updates and reviews and breakdowns and stuff like this. If you haven't seen my Flash Season 6 Episode 3 review, you can click in the cards above or it'll be on the end card of this video, as I only uploaded that review a couple of hours or so before this one. So check that out, but let's get into Arrow Season 8 Episode 3, Welcome to Hong Kong. So the very beginning of this episode saw Oliver waking up in Hong Kong, and I felt like this scene, and perhaps other scenes linked to this in the episode, weren't really made definitively clear. And what I mean by this is that if you guys remember from the Flash last week, and from what we learned in that episode, which was episode 2, is that the antimatter wave was supposedly heading towards Earth 2 anyway. But the way the Monitor said this to Oliver after asking how did he fail, is that he told him not to interfere and avoid entanglements when on another Earth, which we all know he did through things such as preventing Tommy's undertaking and altering the fate of Laurel Lance, and all of this made it seem that Earth 2 being erased was a direct result from Oliver's actions. But at the same time, it is never made precisely clear, especially when you take into account, as I just said, what we saw in the Flash with the antimatter appearances kind of heading towards Earth 2 with a big bold arrow. I mean, did Oliver's actions on Earth 2 encourage the antimatter to come further to Earth 2 like we saw in last week's episode? I mean, the Monitor also, for one, if not the first time, gave off a very frustrated face when he said that the survival of the multiverse requires that you obey my rules. Now, ever since this conversation, I had wild theories going on throughout my head that I've pondered long ago as well, in that could they be somehow planning for a big twist with the Monitor, one that isn't even of the Crisis storyline usually, or maybe at the very least make it so that perhaps he did something as bad as making the antimatter appear on Earth 2 like prematurely or something. I'm not saying that happened, I'm just saying adding some kind of thing in like that as a result made Oliver kind of fall in line, which in the way the Monitor could see it could help, you know, the end goal of saving the multiverse, because he wants Oliver to listen to him. I mean, who knows for now, but there's definitely more hints in the episode as to suggest that there's something more going on here, which we'll get to. Also, before I forget, what a brilliant way to start this episode off, rather than just having Diggle and Oliver having a fight scene in the corridor, which I felt was just executed perfectly. I just want to see that again and have every episode start off with something similar to this. But winding back a little bit, I thought Stephen Amell's acting in these beginning scenes with the Monitor was really great, especially when talking about watching people like Tommy Merlin and his Earth 2 version of Moira get absorbed by the antimatter wave. And I felt like Katie Cassidy was really strong in this episode as well, because of course her Earth and universe quite literally got erased from existence because of the antimatter, much to her not believing it, which also saw her projecting her loss onto Oliver, which in turn makes him blame himself even more. But going on more about Katie Cassidy, I felt like this really brought out some great acting for her in this episode, which also just set up an interesting storyline for her from here on out, as she is now stuck on Earth 1, which, you know, as I mentioned last week in my review, paves her way for protecting Star City in the future scenes of last season, where she actually met Mia. Yeah, if the Canaries show looks to be possibly set in the present day after Crisis, then this means that she has already known Mia for a long time by the time Mia first met Laurel, the future Laurel Canary, last season, if you guys are still with me there. I felt like her revelation of Earth 2 this episode, was an inevitability though, with her seeking out someone she knew when she ran back with Caden James who could help her get to Earth 2 through fixing the interdimensional extrapolator, which turns out it wasn't really even broken, I don't think. But either way, it just wasn't really surprising because we all ultimately knew it was gone. But maybe some of you out there thought that there was just elements of it still alive. But as a result of this revelation, of course, it's brought in some very cool scenes for her, which just provided as more emotional moments with her attempting to accept the loss of her Earth, which also saw Lila Michaels get involved, which leads me to say only prior to this, John Diggle used a codename for Lila to get into a location where he and Oliver could get access to the Argus intranet or whatever to get more details on Dr. Wong, who I totally forgot to mention so far was Oliver's mission for the Monitor this episode as, first Dwarf Star Particles and now Dr. Wong for some reason. And with that codename of Lila being Harbinger and now that ending, and yes, I'm already going to kind of speak about that briefly, is that it does really seem as though they're giving the Harbinger arc to Lila, which we've known for quite some time now that we'd be getting, but I just wasn't exactly sure how they pull it off in reference to the comic book storyline. But it appears through that ending interaction in this episode that they have known each other for quite some time. So I'm very, very, very looking forward to seeing what secrets may be unraveled here. All around the time of this in the episode, we saw Oliver blaming himself for Earth 2, saying that he feels through ignoring the orders of a cosmic being that Earth 2 disappearing is really his fault. And now this is where things started to get fairly juicy on this front for me, because all along the plot we learned that Dr. Wong was working on the Alpha Omega virus, which was also a nice kind of playback into the Arrow Season 3 flashbacks. But more interestingly, we had conversations take place with Tatsu and Oliver that made him raise his suspicions about the Monitor. Now, this originated in the episode in how before Tatsu became the protector of her city and a vigilante, that she was with the Crescent Order, where she had actually heard about Marnovu, who is the Monitor as we all know, who as described to her from the Crescent Order is a being who transcends universes. But later on in the episode, when Oliver, because of the stakes of Crisis, is willing to bargain the Alpha Omega virus to another old face who is China White, another kind of nice flashback to earlier Arrow, which is no surprise in terms of the amount of stuff they're going to pull out the bag this season. In order to retrieve Dr. Wong for the Monitor, Tatsu mentions to Oliver that Marnovu is said to believe that order comes through chaos, which just made me, really think, what is the Monitor up to? She also mentions to Oliver in related lines just why is Oliver doing what the Monitor asks, which, as a result just rubs into the viewer's mind with everything that we've heard already, that there could be something larger going on here where the Monitor's way isn't necessarily the best way. Now this brought us another amazing scene from Oliver Queen, who just has such a huge burden on his shoulders, explain that he has to believe that the Monitor can help, otherwise everything he is doing would be for nothing. Ultimately, he needs his family to live, so, damn if he's going to do everything and anything he can to get that outcome. But I also like how this mental attitude of Oliver was like a playback on the conviction Oliver had in his mission back in Season 3, with Tatsu saying having such a frame of mind took aspects of Oliver's humanity and perspective on missions. Slowly throughout the episode, Oliver starts to perk up to the idea that maybe the Monitor isn't the defining answer to Crisis, or at the very least that there is something that is definitely up there. But as Diggle mentioned, why can't the Monitor just snap his fingers and get both things like the Dwarf Star Particles and now Dr. Wong in this episode? What other shady things could be going on here, which also who Lila is notorious for being shady in the past, acting as his Harbinger, was likely aware about all of these preparations needing to take place beforehand. I mean, I would love to hear your theories down in the comments below in relation to that. I mean, what more could she now know about that we have yet to find out about? It's just something that I'm definitely interested in seeing unfold in this Arrowverse's iteration of Crisis on Infinite Earths. Now, the action in this episode was really great, and there was a bunch of it that occurred throughout. I especially loved the scene where Oliver infiltrated that building single-handedly, which contained the virus, but also the action towards the end of the episode, which saw Tatsu fighting China White before getting stabbed, but luckily being saved last minute by Laurel Lance, who is very much so on her own heroic journey. I mean, not only as of last episode, but very intrigued to see if this power trio with Diggle, Laurel, and Oliver kind of continues forward, because it'd be great to see if Oliver isn't purely alone from here on out. I mean, we know Diggle was going to be wrapped in a lot, but how about Laurel as well? And ultimately, just the way that this mission went down has kind of made Oliver think differently about his approach to saving the multiverse, and ultimately led to the scene towards the end where he's talking to Tatsu about owing it to everyone to find more out about the Monitor, and that there is far older organizations on this earth than the Crescent Order, and that he's going to Nanda Parbat to find out more answers. Now, if you guys remember back to I can't remember which one, Arrow Season 8 trailer, I believe we saw Oliver with Talia al Ghul, and that's when Thea gets involved, so I'm guessing he's looking into some ancient documentation or something on a scroll or anything to do with the Monitor. But at the same time, I've also written down in my notes here, like, surely he would know that Oliver is up to something like this, and maybe we're going to see him pop up next episode in relation to it, but, you know, I can't wait to find out about what he thinks about Oliver looking into him. We also have to remember at this point as well that Oliver wanted to hold off on giving Dr. Wong to the Monitor right away before he went to Nanda Parbat, I guess, to potentially look into things a bit more, but that's when Lila hands Dr. Wong over, as we spoke about earlier briefly with her scene with the Monitor. So now I'm just looking forward to seeing Lila's secrets unfold, and so I'm pretty sure this would be another thing which she hasn't told Diggle about, and we know they've got their past kind of angst with each other about, you know, keeping secrets, and now we found out, oh wait, you know, the Monitor, this cosmic being, now you're his harbinger. What else don't I know? As for the flashback scenes, guys, I'm just gonna be straightforward with you. I don't care about them. I briefly mentioned this in my first review. I thought that the JJ scenes and, you know, Connor Hawke scenes were good, to be honest. But other than that, I'm not signed up for this. I know some of you may be annoyed about this or are really interested in it, but I have nothing quite literally to say about any of it this episode. Unless something amazing happens, I don't care. But overall, guys, this episode felt really good. But it also felt like very fast-paced, but not in a bad way. I mean, obviously, it's a good way. Things feeling very fast-paced in Arrow Season 8, very main plot-oriented, a lot of action. But also, it just kind of made me feel like this review was more or less one big conversation, as the plot in this episode, minus a couple of segregations, which ultimately just ended up at the same place with Laurel and Lila, it felt like one ongoing just big conversation or action to do with obviously Oliver going after Dr. Wong for the Monitor, but the biggest question coming out of this being just who is the Monitor exactly, and is his way the best way? Is there another way? Because Oliver says there always is another way, and are they inferring that? I feel like there was a lot of lines in this episode and a lot of inferring moments which is meant to make us as an audience think differently about, you know, this Monitor being this saving cosmic being for Crisis on Infinite Earths. I mean, what if there's some huge twist that we don't really know about yet that they could be waiting to pull out the bag? But I could be completely wrong there, but there's definitely something they're teasing to us here, and we're going to find out more next week, I guess, in Nanda Parbat. But I'd love to know what you all think ultimately about it compared to episode 1 down in the comments, and where you think things could be going on with your various theories. There's definitely a lot going on that we have yet to find out about. But other than that, guys, like this video if you did enjoy it, as it really does show support for the Arrow content. Subscribe for more Arrow videos just like this, and make sure you check out my flash review that I uploaded earlier. It will be in the cards above, but it will also be in these videos that are appearing alongside me. Join my Discord server if you want to talk about Arrow with me directly. It should be in the top pinned comment of the comment section down below. But thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you vigilantes in the next video. Goodbye.